Come on, let's do this.
Dr. Claudia Thompson takes us on a journey of self-discovery.
My road was not easy, and that's okay.
Acceptance.
It's not like you're becoming something different. You're remembering who you are.
And awakening.
We're all walking each other home. That's the magic right there. I have words about these things.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. This is Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Hi, Dr. Claudia. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. I am really excited and happy to actually get to meet you. I have been a fan. I have come across your videos a year or two ago, possibly on TikTok and Instagram, and all your guided messages. And I love them so much. Being someone that is very in touch and intuitive myself, I just really love getting your messages. And it just feels like they are meant for me individually. And I know they're meant for the collective, but you have such beautiful messages to share. So thank you. And thank you for joining me to talk all about living authentically, connecting to this guidance that we have and all the good stuff. So welcome.
Thanks, Courtney. Well, I'm so excited to be here. And I love that you have been along on this ride with me for this long, for a couple of years now on TikTok, because I did start sharing those messages on TikTok before I did on Instagram. And so you guys that were following me on TikTok are like my OG collective that I communicate to. So it's super exciting.
I love that. So how did you get started? Because I've read a little bit about you and your background, and you talk about this remembering of coming back into yourself. And that's kind of part of the work I do, is learning how to connect to who we really are on an inner level. And part of that is coming to get in touch with source, get in touch with who we are on the spiritual side. So how did you find yourself in this position to really go within and explore this side of you, and then to start living this magic? I think what you say on your website is, we're all magical, but you need to just remember it. And I think that is such a beautiful phrase. So give me a little bit of a background about like how you got here.
Okay. So this is a couple decades long story, to be completely honest, because and I think anyone that does the type of work that I do, or is even someone who is just trying to learn how to tap into their intuition, depending on where you're starting and depending on how old you are when you start, there's a process that you have to go through years of unlearning the programs and societal beliefs and things that we have been taught to move against our intuitive capabilities. And so it's really a decade-long process for a lot of us. And for me, I know that these abilities, now it's easy when you have 20/20 hindsight and you can look back and go, oh, this kind of stuff has been happening all along. I just wasn't aware that is who was communicating with me, that those were the messages I was receiving. Those were the feelings and the vibes and the synchronicities and all of those things were coming from. But I really started to lean into it when I started to heal from the things that I was struggling with. And it was a very layered process, like peeling back layers of an onion. And a lot of us have different top layers. And for me, the top layer was healing the relationship I had with food and my body, because I was in a consistent shame spiral, feeling shame and guilt all of the time in regards to either how much I move my body or what I put in my body, or how I looked, comparing myself to others. And when you're in those kinds of places and spaces, it's very hard to tune in. So that was really the first layer that I had to heal, to tap into that intuition, to start to trust it. For me, it was a very, okay, I'm gonna have a healthy relationship with my body. And when you do that, you start to realize that you have capabilities that you weren't aware of because you were too focused on something else first. So that was my initial process. And then that really snowballed into healing more and more and more, and opening more and more and more. And so as I healed, I leaned into meditation processes to activate the pineal gland and balance your energy centers and create brain and heart coherence. And for me, that is what really opened up my capabilities in a way that would allow me to do what I do. When I started this process, it was not something that I thought I was going to help anyone else do. This was definitely something that I was like, I'm gonna heal, and I'm gonna have healthy relationships, and I'm gonna have a successful career. And then all of these messages started coming in, and I had to share them with the collective, and then I bunny trailed off into my purpose. So there was a lot of releasing of control through my journey.
Well, releasing control is huge. It's something I definitely struggle with. And I understand that struggling even with the food thing, because it is something we can control, I think. But what is really interesting about your journey is that it started there with your body image, because as an intuitive, you know that your body is sending you so much in the way of messages and signals. And that's where, when we can really feel and tap into our body, that's where we start, I think, to understand that we're getting these intuitive messages. I have a stomach ache after I talk to this person, or, I get headaches in this kind of environment, things like that. So it's very interesting that once you started to heal your body issues, you started to open up more to the spiritual connection that you had. So I think that's a huge thing for anyone that's like starting, like you said. We get these messages, we have these things our whole life, and sometimes we just don't know. So is that kind of where that remembering comes in, once you actually start to be like drawing those 2020 connections?
Yeah, because the thing is the act of expanding your capabilities is really the act of remembering the infinite being that you are, the lineage that you have, where your soul comes from. Obviously, like, there's not, it may not actually be obvious, but there is one source that we all come from, but our souls can originate, once they drop out of source, from different places and spaces. And having an experience where you're able to go into meditations and access this information that's always been there. It's not like you're becoming something different. You're remembering who you are, and you're stripping down limiting beliefs and a lack of boundaries, relationship dynamics, things that we felt that we had to live a certain way, and then you come to realize that you don't. And you can actually move from a place that's soul driven versus external driven. Really, you're stripping down the external to go to the internal.
Why do you think? Because I think that is one of the hardest things I think that we face when we really want to get authentic and be ourselves and live as we are, as we truly are. We have to strip out these limiting beliefs. Why do you think we are so conditioned? Where are all these limiting beliefs coming from? Because, it's something that's talked about so much. It's something I've struggled with. And just like you found your purpose through your journey of healing your body issues, starting there, and then it moved on. That is where I have found some of my purpose, is stripping back these limiting beliefs and trying to understand, no, I am not all these things that the outside world has put on me or people expect me to be. I am someone else. And it takes a lot of courage. It's not easy to step out and move past those. So why do you think I don't think it's a unique thing. I think we are all faced with these limiting beliefs.
Oh, yeah, it's not unique. And it's actually, where do they come from? Okay, so there's a spirit. We have to break this into two different places. There is a spiritual soul growth mission bucket, and then there is the biological bucket. Because I have a PhD. I'm very scientific. So when I moved into exploring these areas, I wanted to know, okay, what do we know about this? What can we scientifically show is happening? How can we draw a connection between what a lot of people consider like woo-woo spiritual stuff and actual biological responses? Like, how do we connect those dots? Because they are connected. And when it comes to limiting beliefs, there is a period of your life, basically when you are born to about ages 7 or 8. Every person varies when this particular time closes off in your brain. But we're able to show that when you're born, your brain is existing in a very specific brainwave state. And it moves from delta to theta to alpha. And then at that 7 to 8 year mark, you move into what we call beta. And that is the way most of us are walking around in our daily life. And that beta brainwave state doesn't allow you to access the subconscious programming. Those other 3 states allow you to access that subconscious area of your brain. So what's interesting is you were born, and then up until ages 7 or 8, when you really had no capacity to decide what you wanted, who you were, what you liked, all of those things, that's when all of your brain was programmed. And it was programmed by every person you interacted with, your caretakers, every smile you saw, every side eye, every like tone that somebody had, whether that be happy or excited or passive aggressive, you absorbed all of that. And what your brain did is it said, okay, if I behave this way, I stay alive. It does that area of your brain doesn't understand like, oh, what's for my highest good. It only understands like, okay, you didn't die today, so we're going to continue on with that behavior. So even if it's incredibly toxic, that area of your brain thinks, oh, that if we keep running that pattern, they stay alive. And so that's the biology side of limiting beliefs. And that's why it's also so difficult to change them, because you have to tap into that subconscious area of your brain in order to rewire basically the operating system that is your brain. So it's like the operating system needs to be changed. And in order to do that, you have to drop into one of those other brainwave states. And that's why meditation is so powerful in this. The right type of meditation. So not all meditations are created equal when it comes into dropping into these states. But that's why that's so powerful, because that allows you to access that area, basically clean house, and then download the information of like, okay, this is who I actually am. It isn't what I thought it was.
So we almost have to like reformat our hard drive, take us back to like the factory settings so that we can rebuild and reprogram ourselves to be who we truly are, where we can actually make these decisions ourselves for ourselves of who we are, as opposed to what is being fed to us in those states. No pressure, parents. I have enough pressure. You know, I feel like right now I have 2 little kids. Right. Harper's going to be 4 in a couple of weeks, and Hayden's 2. And I'm just like, am I ruining every like thing I do? You know, am I?
No. And that's the soul side. So we talked about the biology side, right? Okay.
Yeah.
The soul side is that before our soul came into this particular body and into this lifetime, it went, okay, what do I need to expand? What do I need to learn in order to expand and grow as a soul? And so if you're going to expand and grow as a soul, you're not going to have, like a really easy time. You're going to have difficulties. There has to be difficulties. It's like that. There's like that trend on TikTok for a while. It was like, do it for the plot. Like you have to do some things for the plot in order for it to expand and grow and be interesting and feel a wide range of emotions while you're here. And so the things that we define as the overarching themes of our life that we overcome while we're here, a lot of them we chose. We chose those. And so we chose to come into places where we're going to have these limiting beliefs, where we're going to have these struggles, so that we learn how to overcome them. So everything that's happening, and especially for you, you're a very intuitive person. So anchoring in the frequency, in the place where everything that's happening, even if it feels like a mistake, is for the highest good, allows you to create more good, allows you to create from a more elevated place, instead of going into a place where like, oh, I don't want to hurt that. I mean, obviously you don't want to mess up your kids, but like you're not going to. I've got firm beliefs on that. And everybody has to learn lessons. Everybody makes mistakes. And the more we lean into understanding that none of us are perfect and we're doing the best that we can in that very moment, even though it looks different for everyone, is so important. And that's important for kids to understand, because the more we embrace that, the more they embrace their authentic selves, the more they don't feel like they have to be perfect all of the time and fit into some mold that is impossible to place yourself in.
Well, I even think when it comes to kids, because when we do come in, like you said, we come in with this path that we've already chosen, this purpose, these lessons that we want as a soul, and we forget them and we come in. But, like you said, with children, up until about 7 or 8, that is truly when they are most connected to spirit. So if you watch your children, they intuitively know what they want and they need. And I think it's almost society strips them from that. I'm actually working right now helping bring about a course about intuitive for helping to hone that intuition in your children, because they are so intuitive. And I think any parent and anyone, especially in this work, will say, our kids are our biggest teachers. So, I mean, I think there's so much to be learned from them. So I agree with you. We can't totally mess them up, but it always takes me back to like when I started therapy ages ago. It's like, and I told my mom I was going to therapy, and she's like, oh, it's going to be my fault. Always comes back to the mom, where it kind of does. It always kind of goes back to the parents, what we did to our kids at our childhood. And now we have all these limiting beliefs. But they are in a way chosen. So, you also said something about...
I think too, we're in a generation of cycle breakers. And the conversations that we're having, these were not conversations that our parents were having.
No.
The time period was different. What was acceptable was different. How we saw things was different. And like, the thing is like, people do the best with what they have. And consciousness is evolving on the planet. And so as consciousness evolves, your ability to parent evolves, your ability to have these conversations evolves, your ability to have connected conscious relationships evolves. And so everything is moving in that upward trajectory. And it's because a large group of individuals said enough is enough. We need to push past this. And so I think we're living at a time where we're moving past the need for cycle breakers, because we were a giant swath of them. And so like, things are changing trajectory now.
Well, it is. I mean, you see it all over social media, as all the parents breaking cycles, generational, what's been passed down through the generations and things like that. So that is definitely a big thing. And I have talked about this a lot with previous guests and my mentor too, is that, we are in a shift of consciousness. Everyone is kind of like rising up to that. And if you're not on board, you're kind of going to be left behind. But that brings me to the idea, to this thought, is like, you were talking about, we come here with a soul lesson to almost kind of overcome sometimes these limiting beliefs or these challenges that are put in front of us. What if we are someone that is not open enough or willing enough to go there? Because there are a lot of people that are not conscious enough or aware enough, don't have that self-awareness to understand that they need to either break them down or learn a lesson or open themselves up to something more. And they just allow themselves to be defined in
So
these ways.
I think something you said really stood out to me, and it was the comment about, if people aren't willing to go into this, that they're going to get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to be very careful about how we have that conversation, because people, their souls originated from different places and spaces before they got here. And their intentions, their missions, their purpose while they're here, and what they're guided towards is their experience. And I think we need to be very careful in the spiritual community, in the conscious community, about not trying to say, well, you're going to get left behind, and I'm going to go here because I'm doing this. Because the thing is like, that gets us into this like religiosity about the situation. And that's not helpful. Because again, everybody is doing the best that they can with where they are. It may not be in alignment with you or me or someone else who's really diving in and doing like shadow work and doing the healing work and things like that. But the thing is this particular planet is one of density, and it's one of contrast, extreme contrast. And while we're elevating, that contrast still needs to exist. Okay. And so light, the way I see this is source is unconditional love. It's a solid state of unconditional love, and it wants to understand itself. And that's where we all come from, is we are these individualized fractals of source that are having a unique experience. And source wants to have every kind of experience, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, or otherwise. And so we need to spend our time focusing in on what we feel drawn to, where we feel like we should go to, versus the us versus them. And I'm not saying that like that's the way that you meant it, or that's the way other people mean it. I just think that if we focus, the more we focus in on us, and the more we focus in on what is the path that we're walking, the more we create that frequency that allows other people to be drawn into it and move towards it. So the people that are going to do the work, the people that are going to walk that path, they're going to do it. We don't have to, we can't force anyone. We can't convince anyone that, like, that's not our job. Our job is to share our experiences. Our job is to go where we are intuitively guided, and whoever's meant to go with us is going to come with us. Like that's just what's going to happen. So we don't have to worry about trying to save the world, I guess is the best way to probably put it. And I think we all, as we awaken and as we have that remembering, have those layers peeled back of remembering, I think that we move through these processes where we want to help everyone, and we want to notify everyone, and we want everyone to feel and experience what we're experiencing. And then you start to release control of that. And that's how you know that you're moving through the system, is when you start to really release control of that, and you start to allow the universe to move around you instead of you trying to move it.
Well, control. Let's go there, because that is something I personally struggle with. I've always been a control freak.
Me too.
And I totally understand. Like, I logically understand. I spiritually understand the whole concept of, allowing and releasing and letting the universe come in and take care of everything as long as I'm showing up and doing my part. But how do you let go? Because still, it's like so inbred in me, in my demeanor. It's like, I've talked about it before. I've said it, I'm the person that will read the last page of a book because I have to know how it's going to end, because I want to control the whole scenario. And you can't. I mean, life will just slap you in the face over and over again when you try and control. I've experienced it a million times over. So how do you release control? How do you allow?
So what's really funny about what you just said is reading the last page of the book. When you have access to a bunch of timelines and you can see into your own places and spaces, you can actually access the last page of the book. And then the release of control isn't in finding out what happens, it's finding out how you get there. Because it's like, you're like, oh, well, I know the quickest way to get there. And the universe is like, no, ma'am, that is not how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And I think the way that helps me and the way that helps my clients is leaning into faith, leaning into that deep knowing that you are always supported, that you are always safe, that you are always guided, and that when you pay attention to the guidance, you are always going to be led in the direction of your highest good and the highest good of all. Maintaining that belief and focusing in on that when you're struggling with the how and the when, and for some people, the what. For me, I don't have problems with the what. The what I'm well aware of, but like, it's the when and the how that's like, come on, let's do this. But what I've found too is like, I lean into faith and I take that, basically it's taking a leap of faith. It's taking a leap and going, I'm going to jump off this cliff and I'm going to trust that I'm going to get safely landed on the ground with no injuries and everything's going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch myself right off. And what I found is that you then start to build confidence, and then you then start to build a bank of proof that you can go back to when you're having a hard moment. Because the more you throw yourself off this proverbial cliff of faith, the more proof you get that everything works out, and it works out more beautifully than you could have come up with on your own. And I have been building that bank for a very long time. I've thrown myself off of faith cliffs. I'm like, okay, is this the last one? And it's like, no. I do this continuously over and over and over again. And it gets easier, to be honest, every time that you do it. And because you have more proof, that everything worked out. You have more proof that like all of those fears that you have didn't come into fruition. And that's the thing. When it comes to being more intuitive, when it comes to being more authentic, when it comes to remembering who you are and leaning into these places and spaces, the more you do it, the more it proves itself that you don't need the fear. Because fear is one of those lower vibrational emotions. Like, yes, we are going to experience it from time to time, but you'll notice if you look back in your life, the times that you struggled the most, the times that things were the hardest, were the times that you really held on to fear and you didn't need to.
Well, would you say your fear is more rooted in the ego then at that point?
Yes and no. There are parts that you definitely have to go do the shadow work, and you have to go scoop those parts of you that are fearful because the ego is going to get injured. Then there's the additional component that we are in a dualistic realm. There is duality, there is light, there is darkness, and there's going to be those things around you that try to scare you, that try to knock you off your path. There's going to be things that are sticky and tough and dense. And it's in saying, hey, you know what? I see you, but I don't accept you. That's not my path. So I see you, you exist, cool, thanks, but no thanks. It's in doing that that you anchor in that place of like unconditional love, unconditional trust, and faith. Mm-hmm. And that's why I always go back to faith, because it's always faith over fear. Always, always, always faith over fear. It works every single time. It will anchor you in a higher frequency, and you will pull in the experience that is more loving, that is more beautiful, that is more aligned with your authentic self when you do that.
Well, it's really interesting that you brought up faith, because I've been talking about that a lot lately. Most of my conversations, and I talk to at least one or two people a week. We have a weekly podcast here. I'm ghostwriting a book about being guided. I'm writing my own book. Like I'm a writer. So I work with a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life. And the one constant, whether I'm talking to a matchmaker or a coach or, a spiritual mentor, whatever it is, it always comes back to the concept of faith. There's two constants that really seem to come into play at all times. And now it's kind of becoming like this mission for me to uncover and explore really where the root of this is. It's one is faith and two is service. Finding your purpose is within service of giving your gifts over into the service of others. So these two things are extremely important. And I have also found that anyone who has reached any type of what you would say is success in life, whatever that definition of success is, whether it's money or fame or just happiness in a family, it usually is rooted in the concept of believing in something greater than you. And whether it's God, whether it's whoever. I mean, it doesn't have to be religious. The universe, as long as you believe in something bigger.
The best way to, because I mean, there's many paths up the same mountain, right? But the mountain is the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And having that belief that you're being guided, having that belief that there is something greater than you, that you belong to, is incredibly important. And I love that you brought up service to others, because that is a huge component. Like faith and service to others, like that's the magic right there. Because the things that we do, again, we're all coming from the same source. Mm-hmm. So when you serve somebody else, you're really serving yourself. You're serving the collective good. And the experiences that we have while we're having our own individualized experience, they're so incredibly intertwined with other people's. Like you found me because of these messages that I was given to put out. And I have to be honest, I was so scared to put out those messages when I initially did, because I have a PhD and I'm like, someone's going to call me crazy or a quack or whatever. And like, I was terrified to do it. And they were screaming at me like, this isn't just about you, ma'am. This isn't just about you. You need to share these messages. And I started doing it. And I got over my fear pretty quickly, because I was blown away. I can't even tell you the amount of Sundays that I spent in bed reading comments from people, bawling my eyes out, because I'm like, how are these going to this many people? How are they touching this many people? How is this exactly what they needed to hear in that moment? It showed me how connected we all are, and how source and unconditional love works through the people. And, you saying like, I feel like those messages are for me. They are for you.
Yeah.
When something hits you like that, it is for you, because source is using all of us to communicate with each other. We're all walking each other home.
I get it. The whole concept of even stepping out there and putting yourself out there in this space, because, I come from a very grounded space. I worked in Hollywood for a long time. I come from a space that isn't really accepting of this like spiritual world, except now that I've put myself out there a little bit to talk about it. And I had the same fears as you. Like, are people going to think I'm crazy? Are they going to call me a quack? Like, what is all this woo woo thing? And there's a part of me that's like, no, I want to strip that away. This belief and knowing doesn't have to be woo woo or crazy or weird. It's part of all of us. And so, but it is scary. And But it does become apparent once you do put yourself out there and you get past that fear and you start to accept it more, you do open yourself up to the realization that it is a lot more common. Once you open up that conversation, more people come to you. Yeah, I believe in this. Or even like where I come from in my past career is like you start to see people talking about it more. And I don't know if it's just because you're raising your frequency or your awareness to it, that it is like if you say, I want to buy a red car and you keep seeing red cars kind of thing. It keeps coming to play,
Yeah.
but it does open you up. So I get it. Like stepping out and being, having messages where you're like, my guides are telling me, like, I totally get it because I've always believed in it. But, it could be scary for people that don't know you in that way. Like, okay, so you hear voices now.
Right. Yeah. But, like, okay, now she's hearing things. Great.
Yeah. Like, do we need to commit you at this point, But coming back to the whole concept of service. So faith and service being two of the big components of all of this work is, how do you look at service? Do you look at service as, this is a concept I've personally been struggling with, because in my mind, when I say in service of others, it's like, okay, I need to go and serve Thanksgiving dinner to needy people type of thing. But my husband and I have had this conversation a lot, that service is more than that. Having this platform to talk is a service. Writing someone's book and helping them get their message out is a service. So I kind of struggle, and I don't know if it's my limiting beliefs, my preconceived notions, what it is. And this concept of service is, I feel like all I'm doing right now is benefiting me, and I'm not actually doing a service because I'm not, handing out backpacks to kids that need them.
Well, I would argue that if we asked everyone that you've helped, their response would be different. So I do think that there is some limiting beliefs in there about the value that you bring and how we do serve others. Because the thing is like, service isn't about emptying your cup. It's about pouring from a full one. And when you pour from a full one, there's an energetic exchange in everything that you do. So like this platform, us having this conversation, is a service. The messages that I put out, that is a service. I mean, it feels to me like I'm not, like you said, there's that limiting belief that like you need to like go save a small struggling village in a third world country in order for it to be service. And that's not it. The thing is if you're inspiring somebody to move in a direction that fulfills their purpose, you are serving. And so it's interesting that we're having this conversation, because I actually had this come up for myself about a week and a half ago. So I'm writing a book too.
Oh, great.
And I'm really excited about it. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who also is very intuitive and speaks to the guides and all of these things. And sometimes my guides will deliver messages through somebody else because they know I will be like, please, I don't think so. Not right now. And so I had someone that I trust very, very much, like that had some stuff come through, and it was about writing a second book on a different topic. And the conversation that came through was like, yes, this book that you're currently writing is going to help a lot of people. But the service part is the second one, because you don't need this one at all for your healing process at all, but somebody else does. And you have the information. So now you have to do double duty. And so that's where, I know, right? I'm like, please. But like, this is where those things come out. You have to, in order for you to energetically receive your fulfillment, you have to allow somebody else to get to theirs. And so that's how I'm starting to see service in a way. Like this particular second book, it's very technical when it comes to food and fasting and things like that. And that's stuff that's just second nature to me. There's nothing in there that goes, oh, this is my journey, and let's talk about me, but while I'm talking about me, I'm helping you type kind of thing. Like that's going to light me up. That's going to fill my cup and make me feel really fulfilled. But this other piece is something that a lot of other people need. They need that information. And so my service is to do both. And so even though that may still be correlated with my quote unquote work that I do, it's serving somebody else because it's not something that my soul is like needs for growth.
Yeah. I totally see what you're saying. I mean, because this has definitely been something I personally have struggled with, because the whole concept of service, what I'm doing right now, is very self-fulfilling, and it feels almost selfish at times. But I know better that it is for the greater good. So it's kind of like that balancing act. Like, at what point is this actually in service of others when I feel fulfilled from it? So it is, I mean, and even right now I'm ghostwriting a book while I'm writing my own book, and you get pulled in which ways, which one do you want to do? And I know the ghostwriting the book is in service of someone else, and it is going to help other people. And she doesn't know how to get the words on the page. So that is me serving. And that is a very clear distinguishment for me. But something like this, having this conversation or writing my own book or anything else that I'm doing, there is a part of it where I'm like, wow, this is how much of this is for others versus for myself. But it truly, truly is. And so I struggle with that. I struggle with that concept, but I know that those are the two like overarching themes: service and faith. And I don't know what else I would put in there as highly as those two, of learning how to really trust who you are on an inner authentic level, is finding your purpose and serving others, using your gifts in service of others, and finding faith and having faith in the greater good or something. I think
bigger. on the journey, I'd actually add one more. And that's more the prequel. I mean, you need faith and service through those, but in order to serve somebody else, you have to be willing to look at yourself, and you have to be willing to heal what you have going on in the shadow to begin with. And so you really can't get drawn into that service mode until you're at a place where your cup is full. So the first component of that is filling your own cup. And so I think it's interesting that you're like, I'm struggling with this. And so what I would say is that since you're starting to struggle with this, this is really fulfilling to me. And is this selfish or not? That means that your cup is starting to get full, which means it will start to spilleth over, which means you will start to be called in other service directions because you have the capacity to do that. But you have to remember that our guides are not going to ask us to go in a direction that's beyond our capacity. And I would say that there are a lot of people that are still very much just trying to get to the capacity where they have their own full cup.
So that is actually the prequel. So you have to fill your cup first. You have to find that fulfillment. You have to take care of yourself before you can serve. Your faith is going to come into play in that. And faith is actually leads me to one of the other ones that I think is out there, is the courage, like having the courage to trust, having the courage to take that leap, having the courage just to be like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. It might not be the way everyone says I should be living my life, but it's the way I'm being called or the way I feel. And you have to have courage to follow that step, that guidance, that push, your intuitive nudge or whatever it may be to push you in that direction. So those are, I think, four big. So I went from 2 to 4 very quickly, but those are 4 big. I think
you doubled in size very quickly.
Big factors in that. My mind's working as we're going. But so how you're writing a book? When is this book going to come out? Do you have a release date yet?
I don't have a release date yet, because now I'm adding the second. I actually think the second one might actually end up coming out before the first one.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
I was hoping to get the first. Yeah. This is the book writing process for me is definitely a guided journey in a lot of ways, because I do know with these kinds of things, we can't force them to come out before they're ready to. And especially with the one book, it's the same title as my podcast. And it's really an awakening journey, my journey of how I woke up, how I woke myself up in order to hopefully give other people guideposts on their own journey so that they know that, if they're struggling with things here or there, like that's normal. That's part of the journey. Like my road was not easy, and that's okay. That's okay to start to try and figure these things out in midlife or later life or whatever time of life this is going on. If you are struggling with body dysmorphia or food struggles or just generalized feeling like you're not enough, that's what I want to help people work through with that particular book. The second one is more of a prescription in a lot of ways, on how to deal with, once you've healed your relationship with food, how to deal with getting your body to a place that will allow you to expand your abilities significantly more than you could if you are not eating and cleansing in the way that will assist that process. Because our body does store a lot of past trauma. It stores a lot of information. It stores a lot of excess energy. It stores toxins. It stores all kinds of things. And we do have to clear ourselves out in a lot of ways in order to access those higher frequency downloads that a lot of people are looking to get. So
I feel like I could do a whole other episode where we can just talk about intuitive eating and all the body issues, because that is a huge part of it. And it's one thing that we won't go off too much in it, but one thing I've been very interested in, because, one, having young kids, the way you introduce foods to them is so whole and real. And then all of a sudden, they start getting the Cheetos or the sugar or this at year one. And then it kind of snowballs from there. And I know even when I had my daughter, COVID hit right after that. And my husband and I, hunkered down and went on this huge health kick. We started doing like the plant paradox stuff and things like that. I ended up breaking my foot during that point. And it was on the verge of, do I need surgery or not? And I went to the specialist. I was in San Diego at the time. And she's like, let's put you in a boot and see what happens. I went back for my 6-week checkup later, and she's like, I have never seen a foot heal this well. And I attribute that all to relieving the inflammation in my body and eating, in the way that we are supposed to. Now I reverted back, and I'm trying to get back onto that whole foods, because the more you learn about it, what we put into our food and the way we're eating and our nutrition is just like how we are just physically just trashing our bodies. We need to take care of this, and I need to get better. And so, I mean, I feel like we could do a whole intuitive.
And it's not about being perfect either, because again, like if there's this really fine line and balance with it, because anytime you introduce guilt or shame about a food choice, then you're dropping yourself by doing that. So you have to really have a balanced line with this. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff in our food, specifically in America, that is, I mean, it's banned in other countries. And I know for myself, when I go out of the country, my entire digestive system behaves differently, because the food is, for the most part, actually food. And so it's, a lot of things need to change. And I think that's in conjunction with our change in consciousness, our change in our interest in these more conscious conversations. And everything is going to move up. So as we move up in consciousness, we're going to have to move up in our how we deal with our food supply, how we take care of our planet, how we deal with water, other species. Like how do we deal with all these things in a way that's actually conducive to the highest good, which isn't just the human good.
Well, and it's not even just like you said, all these other things, even what we're introducing into our body in the form of, medicine and Western, the whole concept of let's treat the symptoms as opposed to the root of the cause of things. Or, we're just so dependent on a quick fix in that pill. And there's so much damage, I think, that we're doing to our body that doesn't need to happen. And there's studies about that people just don't want to see. People don't want to talk about because there's too much money behind the push for the other stuff. So I think we could go into a whole body and
we could go into a very long conversation about this. I have words about these things. And the thing is too, like you said, there is so much money but I think the good news about this is we are at a place where these particular, because what that is that this idea that we're going to control things through organizations and money around our health and our well-being and all of those things are going to they've been being unmasked, but they're going to be unmasked even more. The energy is really clear right now that if you are trying to pretend that you are something you are not, you are likely going to get exposed here in the next 6 months to a year. I don't see this energy pattern letting go of the need to go, hey, this is not what it looks like. We need to do better, because we're at that threshold where we're moving into a place where we are going to make things better, and we are going to disassemble those kinds of systems that are saying that we should, take medications and, like you said, treat those symptoms instead of actually treating the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Because treating the root of the problem isn't super financially beneficial.
No.
It's just not.
No. And I think it all comes down to the whole concept of, like we said, a shift in consciousness and the energy around. It's that shifting from that masculine to the feminine, the divine feminine, the patriarchy to the feminine. With more of that coming in, it is going to help us shift more into that feeling, into the knowing, into the more authentic version of us, as opposed to the control and uber, power, let's do this kind of thing. So I think it's something we're all going to experience more of, and hopefully you and I can maybe talk about a little bit more about this, because I get really passionate and worked up when I start talking about this stuff myself, just from my own limited experiences, and I know you have them too. But where else can people get in touch with you if they would like to work one-on-one with you? I know you have workshops or you have meditations, you coach one-on-one besides your book and your podcast. Yeah. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, I do one-on-one sessions. I do mentorship programs that are a bit more intense than I don't do. Just to be clear, I don't do any kind of readings. My job is to connect you with your own guides and activate you into your intuition, into your system, so that you're able to read these signs and signals, and I help you through the healing process and all of that. Do I get information with my clients? Yes, I do, but it's not the typical kind of psychic reading type kind of thing that some people do. I don't do that kind of stuff. So my one-on-one sessions are really to build and grow and activate you into this process so that you can start using your abilities the way that I use mine. So that's what I do when I work with people. But yeah, I have one-on-one sessions. I have meditation. So I have the Awakening series because, again, I feel very strongly that there is a process to activating you through your abilities and turning on your intuition and your radio antenna, because your body has a system built in that you can turn on. And so the purpose of those meditations is to turn that system on. So I have that. And then I have a meditation membership as well, where we meet every month for a live meditation, which can be really beneficial. You get Q&A, all those kinds of things. And it's an amazing group of souls that's in there. And I'm so honored to be able to be a guide for somebody else's journey, because this was so transformative for me myself. And I know what a difference this can make. And so it just makes me so happy to see other people, taking the steps and moving on their path too. So you can find me on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. The handle is Dr. Claudia Thompson. And then my website, drclaudiathompson.com.
Well, I'll put that all in the show notes, and not to put you on the spot if you don't want to, but do you have a guided message or anything for anyone listening, or do you want to just send it to your TikTok?
If I'm being put on the spot, they're definitely here because our connection has been interfered with the entire time.
I know.
Okay, so for those of you that are listening, right now is really about tapping into your abilities and building trust in your own abilities. It's time to stop looking for external sources to validate your own intuition. It's about building that internal intuition for yourself. And the more that you step into that process, the louder your own guides are going to get. Some of you have not asked or not given permission. So you need to give permission to your guides to start helping you. And you do that by asking them to help. That's how I started, actually. So you want to start asking them questions like, can you help me with this? And if you can help me, can you show me this? Like, give them a specific thing that you want to see, because the thing is that when you move into this, you've already agreed on all of these things. They already knew that you were going to ask in this way, and they have planned for these things. They're there to help you. So you want to lean into that, because this is not the time to be just gathering more and more information. It's time to integrate. It's time to develop that internal ability so that you can navigate the next 6 months to a year. The energy is really, really interesting for the next 6 months to a year. So turn yourself on and sit in the frequency that everything's going to work out perfectly.
I love it. That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to meet and have this conversation. And I really hope that we can continue this connection together.
Yeah, it was very nice meeting you. I had a great time. This was great.
Me too. Me too. Well, we will talk to you soon. And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Dr. Claudia Thompson, for joining me in such a great conversation about tapping into your intuition and learning to peel back the layers of self so that we can all be open to the divine guidance available to us. Also, thank you for the beautiful guided message in the end. If you want to work with Dr. Claudia, you can find all of her information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Myers on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll also find intentional media with all of our book releases, courses, and so much more. So check it out and stay tuned. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.